Star Citizen's latest drama is in full swing, but what if you have no real clue about Chris Roberts' $800 million game? When people joke about how SC is a scam, you smile and nod politely, but inside you're wondering, is it really as bad as people say? Well, fear not, by the end of this video, you will have added some intelligent stats to your build, you'll be able to debate flight blades with anybody you want, and you'll be able to explain to your dad why CIG messed up so badly. Although, maybe don't introduce him to Star Citizen because there is a decent chance that he might blow all your inheritance on spaceships. I'll be your reporter for this video, reporting from inside the Star Citizen bubble. I've been following the game since the very beginning. I'm battered and bruised by 12 years of development, but my job is to try to present an impartial report about what has been going on. If you're watching this as a backer of the project, my aim is to lay out where CIG went wrong and leave this video up as a critique for the studio. I'd love your perspectives in the comments. Before we get into the drama, let's very quickly recap the history of the project. Get out your notepads, let's start our beginner's guide to the latest Star Citizen drama. Chris Roberts, legendary Wing Commander and freelancer developer, got up on stage at GDC 2012 and announced that he and Space Sims were back, baby. After a very successful Kickstarter where CIG discovered that people really like buying spaceships, the project grew, the studio grew, and also the scope of the game grew. Star Citizen 2.0 released at the end of 2015 and was the first taste of the future of the game. We could fly around in space, land on some stations. It was very cool, but very limited. Star Citizen 3.0 arrived in December 2017. The play space expanded, moons could now be seamlessly traveled to and landed on. It was the first real wow moment for backers of the project. Over the next 7 years, CIG built out the star system, added planets, added various gameplay systems like mining, salvage, looting. Patches were released roughly quarterly, and the project slowly started to show what it might become. At the end of 2024, 4.0 was finally here. Server meshing, a technology that had been promised for years, was launched. The player count increased from 100 to around 600 players per game universe, also known as a shard, and we now had 2 star systems connected together seamlessly through a jump tunnel. And again, your first jump through the tunnel is a bit of a wow moment. Over the years, there have been many dramas. many highs and lows. The money has steadily flowed. Players have continued to pay real money for in-game spaceships, and the total sits today around $825 million. Enter the drama that seems to have exploded like a grenade over the last couple of weeks: purchasable flight blades. Here's some ordinary gamers explaining what they are.
They decided to add one feature to their game that pissed off the audience. They call it flight blades. Now, what is a flight blade, you might be asking? Well, a flight blade appears to be an actual upgrade, a side grade, that you can pay real money for to install onto your ships to basically change its stats.
There are 4 main reasons why the Star Citizen community is in uproar about these blades, and this has led to 2 major issues for CIG. The first objection to these items was, this is pay to win, isn't it? Here's the Angry Joe Show's reaction to it.
Yes, it did improve your ships, but it also made other parts of your ship worse, but you would do that thing because like it makes your ship better, which you wouldn't do it otherwise if it didn't make it better. So you would pay for this thing and it would help you win.
Now, it's questionable whether the stats that these items change do make much of a difference in-game. Here's Chachi Sanchez, a creator who has worked out how to get VR running in the game, summing up the situation.
It's bad optics, and according to Zero State, he was testing them, and there's barely any significant performance gain or loss at all, so a lot of, yelling about nothing, but it's not really nothing. The fact that they would, gate something like that behind a paywall, just what's next type of thing.
Now, plenty of games are pay to win. Loot boxes, microtransactions, they're in a lot of titles. This isn't anything new, and Star Citizen itself allows you to buy bigger, more powerful and specialist ships. Someone with just the basic $45 Aurora game package doesn't have immediate access to mining or salvage gameplay, and will struggle in combat in certain PvE missions or against somebody in a specialist fighter. But you can earn the ships in the game. There are ship shops that you can visit, and then anything you buy will be added to your account until CIG next does a wipe. And those wipes are fairly infrequent. Something that rarely comes up though when big YouTube channels cover Star Citizen is also the fact that you can rent many of the ships in the game for a very small amount of money. Within a few hours of gameplay, you could earn enough to rent a bigger ship, and then use that bigger ship to make even more money. Star Citizen isn't currently really a hard game to grind. It's not like a mobile game where you just can't progress without paying real money. And I think this is maybe why the Star Citizen community seems to have accepted the ship sales a long time ago. As unlikely as it sounds, they really are actually optional. The original plan for these flight blades was to follow the same release pattern as ships. They would become available to earn in the game a number of months after their original release, in the same way that ships do. But almost universally, people who play SC hated this. Here's Space Tomato summing up how most people felt.
If there's anything that I think should be changed of this, don't make these exclusive to the stores. Please, just release them to the game. Okay, these aren't ships. People didn't pledge for these to help develop the game. These are just things that should be in the game to be used.
The noise within the player base was so loud that CIG had to respond, and they have effectively walked back some of the plan. Going forward, we've decided that for smaller components like flight blades or bomb racks, they should be available in-game at the same time they appear on the store. Now, that frustratingly doesn't apply to this first batch of flight blades. They won't be available in the game until the June patch. But CIG has mostly removed the immediate pay-to-win concerns going forward. Ultimately, this is a very small win for the community. At the very least, it looks like an increase to paywalled items on the store has kind of been held at bay for now. But, and it's a big but, for many people, this wasn't the only or even the main problem. Let's move on to the next issue. The next issue for people who play Star Citizen was that this looked like a blatant cash grab. CIG could easily have dropped these flight blades straight into the universe for free. That was what everybody was expecting. They didn't have to monetize these, but they chose to generously offer the players a chance to pay for them, and not small amounts of money. You could buy full games for the price of some of these.
No, like, just look at the sales. You can pick Cyberpunk, you can pick Baldur's Gate, you can pick Witcher 3 for like $6 right now. Red Dead for $20. These games will give you more fun times.
If CIG had released these items at actual microtransaction prices ranging from $2 to $10, would the community's response been so full of rage? I think that many people would have just shrugged and moved on. Many people believe the prices, especially for what they actually do in-game, are outrageous. Flight Blades somehow offer bad value for money in a game that sells spaceships for hundreds of dollars. It's crazy. They also bundled these items with ship paints, forcing people who wanted certain paints to pay for the blades as well. It screams cash grab. Now, CIG's response doesn't do anything to ease the concerns that this was just a horrible grab for money. For a number of people, the big concern with selling flight blades in the store is that these should be something to aim for in-game. Earning special components like this should be gameplay. Here's Salty Mike summing up the concern.
The issue that people have is that you are selling things that are gameplay opportunities for players to play the game. I have never seen a game that has sold every single aspect of what you can do in the game. Every single aspect is possible to buy. The convenience of something like that is a temptation that is just not healthy for video games, right? Like, once again, this is just my fundamental like basis or like my foundation of what video games should be.
There is a real worry that if CIG continue to sell progression on the web store, they will seriously damage what players do in-game. This is already an issue with the ships. Level Cap and Matimio discussed this on their podcast.
Well, and part of me thinks, like, when the game comes out, I might make an alt account just so I can experience the game without a giant hangar of ships. Because
because you basically just ruined the progression for yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of did that with a few ships, but I got a lot through the referral program that I was like, yeah, use my referral code. The referral program gave me like 20 or 30 ships, whatever it gives. I don't know what it gives, but now my hangar is just loaded with ships, and I'm like, oh, I don't get to have that moment now where I start with my little size 1 ship and then save up enough and get the cooler ship.
Which is like the whole point.
Yeah, I know.
Many people, they've already paid real money for all the ships they could ever need. And so what will those players actually do? CIG recently unveiled plans for crafting and base building. The hope among many people in the community is that this is where the real progression and achievement will play out in the game. The ability to craft better components, sell them or upgrade your ships should in theory create hours and hours of gameplay. The same with base building. Building a giant org base or a space station many years in the future should be months and months worth of gameplay. But if you can buy a crafting blueprint or base modules on the store, or bulk buy all the resources you need with real money, all of those months of gameplay are gone. What are you actually going to do? CIG will create mission content for us to do, but they'll never be able to pump that out quickly enough to keep people playing daily. The sandbox element of the game has to work alongside the handcrafted content. Star Citizen's in-game economy hasn't really left the ground yet, but player trading is obviously going to be affected by decisions like this. Demand and therefore price for rare items in-game is clearly going to be affected if they're sold on the store. There are significant knock-on effects to these decisions that CIG are making. Some of CIG's choices around insurance and item recovery also play into this concern that gameplay is going to suffer. Here's Salty Mike again.
There's insurance for every little thing that you buy now, and you can't possibly lose it. Whether it's the actual insurance on ships or the item recovery stuff that's going to be happening. You can't possibly lose anything. Therefore, you will not have to interact with anyone else in the community, and you will just play the game yourself. And if that's what you're looking for, you're just being selfish, right? You're just being selfish.
CIG's response to this drama does nothing to ease concerns around these areas. It's a serious worry that they're going to stifle the game by killing meaningful in-game progression, the economy, and player interaction. It's pretty funny that after $800 million, the straw that finally broke the camel's back was something as ridiculous as a tiny ship component.
But what did it take to piss off a community that's unpiss-offable?
Flight blades. But a lot of people are more worried about what this means for the future. What else will CIG try to sell? What other revenue streams will they try to create? The CIG response tells us that they're not going to stop selling items like this. For future gameplay kit introductions will ensure these items are obtainable in-game on day one. They are still planning to sell future gameplay kits. What else will this expand to? The community has had quite a lot of fun coming up with things that CIG might try to flog in the future, but no one is really sure what might happen. There is hope that the Star Citizen community's angry response will make CIG think twice the next time they push something onto the store like this, but we'll have to see. The long-term funding of the game, though, has always been uncertain. Here's Luke Stevens with a take on the funding that I actually think is incorrect.
The inherent problem for CIG, and they are all too aware of this, is that at some point they will have to change their monetization strategy. Like right now, they've been raising lots of money with this strategy, but at some point, selling ships and doing this really aggressive thing, they'll have to cut that off or at least minimize it. And this other strategy that doesn't really exist now, which is just buying the game outright and maybe paying a monthly fee for it or something, that will have to take over. But that almost certainly doesn't make as much money as this version of the business model right now, where they're just milking whales dry, basically.
So, a few things to break down from this clip. Luke correctly states that the funding model up until this point has been selling spaceships. $820 million later, it's pretty clear that it's worked pretty well. But to suggest that CIG will stop selling ships, I think there's basically zero chance of that happening. If SC somehow succeeds and is still running in 15 years' time, I still expect CIG to be pumping out new ships and making loads of money from them. What possible reason do they have to stop? They've been optional this whole time, but Chris Roberts and co. have stumbled onto a discovery. If you offer people beautiful spaceships with fully modelled interiors that you can walk around and pretend that you're Han Solo in, well, then some people, not all, some people will be prepared to spend more money than they would on entire other video games. For anyone who is half into sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek, The Expanse, etc., spaceships are cool. And for some people, instead of buying a Lego Superstar Destroyer or Millennium Falcon, they'd prefer to buy a digital ship. I know the prices of the ships are crazy, but I don't think it's that hard to understand why CIG have been so successful. And I think Luke also misunderstands how most backers actually spend money.
And if they think that they can continue selling $1,500 ships while also trying to appeal to the mass market, I think they're high. because the average consumer is going to laugh them out of town.
CIG is not trying to sell $1,500 ships to the average consumer. The game just isn't built on the back of $1,500 ships. I personally have met one person who owns one, and I put up a poll, and it's clear to see that most people wouldn't dream of spending that much on a single ship. The way they get you is actually much more clever than that. Most players will start off with the $45 game package, or maybe they'll spend a bit more for the Avenger Titan. Most people start like that, and some people never spend any more money than that. But a lot of people, a few months down the line, they might think, oh, maybe I'll just upgrade that first ship to something a bit more powerful. And then maybe 3 months after that, they think, well, I'm actually quite enjoying this game. I'd like to put a second ship on the account. Maybe they want to buy a mining ship. Maybe a few months later, they discover that they prefer salvage. So they can melt that ship and use the credit to buy a salvage ship. Maybe then CIG releases a new ship that for some reason they just really love the look of. And you can see where this is going. It is extremely rare for a new player to just come in and immediately slap down $400 on a spaceship. For most players, it's a gradual thing. And some, well, they wake up 6 years later and realize they spent $1,000 and they're now a member of the Chairman's Club and they can now access all the crazy ship packages. If you think that the game has only managed to raise $800 million by milking whales, as Luke says, you're missing the fact that normal people gradually drop significant sums of money on this game over a period of years. This is CIG's real secret. It has managed to normalize average people spending more money over time than they would ever consider in one lump sum. My account is 12 years old. I've spent $1,037. In some ways, that is a crazy and shameful amount of money to spend on a game. But as I scroll through the transactions, you'll see that most of the numbers are pretty small. The biggest is actually a ticket for CitizenCon last year, the annual event where CIG get the community together and show off new stuff. The most expensive ship on my account is worth $190. Obviously not cheap, but I hope it's clear that CIG doesn't need to sell $1,500 ships to make money. Another way to look at game cost is cost per year. I average $86 a year on this game. Luke says that CIG must be high if the average consumer is going to get on board, but there are plenty of games where you spend a lot more than that year after year. One horrible example would be FIFA or EA FC now. Many people pay $100 a year for the Ultimate Edition. They get early access to the game and they get some FC points that allow you to buy loot boxes in the game. Many players also continue to buy FC points for hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars throughout the year for a chance to improve their team. And the crazy part is at the end of the year, they leave everything behind, they flush those hundreds or thousands of dollars away, they buy the next edition of the game and start again. Why do people do that? Well, I think it's probably because a lot of people are obsessed with football/soccer and they have nothing better to spend their money on. And again, I think that Star Citizen has proven that a lot of people are obsessed with spaceships and some have nothing better to spend their money on. There is huge precedent in the games industry of people spending silly money on games, other sports games, mobile games, games that people have subscribed to for years, or even just think about how many games people buy in a single year. If you've played all the major titles from the start of 2025, Oblivion, Expedition 33, Monster Hunter, Doom, Assassin's Creed, how much would you have spent already? Now, obviously not everyone will have bought them all, but some would have already spent upwards of $150 on games this year. And so I just don't think it's silly to think that CIG could entice some of those players over to Star Citizen one day. I do actually mostly agree with Luke Stevens' takes on Star Citizen. He has actually played the game. But I do think that CIG are capable of capturing some of the core gaming audience. The major issue isn't the price of the ships, it's the optics problem that CIG has created for itself over many, many years. And this whole drama has made things much, much worse, but we'll get into that in a bit. Luke is right though about CIG wanting to create that green line on the graph. It's clear that they want to supplement the ship income with other items. In the early days, it was always stated that they didn't want to go down a subscription model, although they kind of actually have a subscription model that gets you cosmetic in-game items each month, so who knows. Will they lean into more cosmetics or will they keep testing out different options like this with the ship components? I don't think CIG knows yet how they're going to fund the project once they reach a full release. But people are seriously worried that selling these blades is one step on a very slippery slope, and CIG's response to this whole thing does nothing to calm those fears. So those are the main issues that people within the community had about the Flight Blades. Concern about pay to win, concern about how cash grabby this whole sale was, concern about how these choices would affect future gameplay, and concern about what future sales tactics CIG might try to pull. This has created two large problems for CIG. One is the current feeling within the Star Citizen community, and the other is how the rest of the gaming world is reporting on this and how that will impact future sales of the game. Let's start inside the Star Citizen community. The SC community, the people who closely follow and play this game, are normally pretty loyal and hard to upset. There are players, like we said, who have thrown crazy amounts of money at this project, thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, sunk cost fallacy is a real thing, but that doesn't explain everybody. There are a lot of people who just really believe that this will one day be something really special. If you don't play the game or follow along with its development, it's pretty hard to understand why anyone would still have hope that CIG might succeed. But for those on the inside, there are enough positive signs that people still believe and spend money. Already, in its completely unfinished state, there are things that Star Citizen does that no other game can. There are genuine wow moments. There's tech that might shock first-time players, and there are signs that eventually CIG might pull off something great. You just have to look past all the bugs, there's a lot of them, and all the issues with the current version of the persistent universe. The community is, on the whole, behind CIG, very supportive, and when CIG do mess up, it's rare that people cause much of a fuss. The community tends to just shrug its shoulders and move on. This time though, that wasn't the case. The vast majority of players were united in anger about the Flight Blades and very vocal on Reddit and the official forums spectrum. It's pretty clear that CIG seriously missed the mark this time. And like we've covered, there are a combination of reasons for why long-term backers are so cross. But it does seem as though CIG's statement has mostly put out the fire. The statement, like we said, really only addressed the pay-to-win issues, but it seemed to have just dampened everything down. CIG also have released some more shiny spaceships, and so to a large degree, the community just has moved on.
And then all the Star Citizen people that are so depressed right now and are ranting against the company and rallying, they're gonna all open their wallets once more. Oh, it's fine. Look, that new trailer they released.
From inside the bubble, it sort of looks like CIG got away with it, but for potential customers outside the current player base, this has been a PR disaster. Here's Morphologist summing up the bigger problem.
So it looks like CIG have seen the community response, and it has continued to be extremely negative, and have decided to make a bit of a concession, but it may be too little too late to get ahead of the negativity that's already spread out to the wider internet covering gaming news. Channels like Luke Stevens have already made a video on the subject, and they're the people who are now setting the narrative for why this decision was made, and unfortunately that narrative is that CIG is running out of money, and that the items that they're selling are purely pay to win. It doesn't matter whether or not either of those things are true, this is the consequence to making decisions without thinking about the consequences ahead of time.
This whole drama has gone semi-viral to an extent, and this is very, very bad news for CIG. If you're a low-tier journalist working for some gaming website, Star Citizen must be a dream. The stories must be so easy to write, whether it's another article about all the money or some drama like this. It must be the easiest game to get clicks on. And so when the Flight Blade drama happened, almost immediately these websites stirred into action, or at least asked some AI to write them an article. Bigger YouTubers, as we've seen, stepped into the breach to inform their communities about the latest craziness going on with everyone's favourite crowdfunded, mismanaged disaster of a game. It's good content, it gets views. I understand why people do it. But for CIG, this is a real nightmare scenario, and it's pretty shocking that they created this whole drama themselves. A lot of the commentary around this debacle has focused on how CIG must be out of money and how this has driven them to these desperate sales tactics. Here's Luke Stevens again explaining the recent news.
The reason why they are dropping the Idris ship kind of seemingly out of nowhere very suddenly, and why they're all of a sudden getting super greedy by monetizing everything in the game itself, is simply because they are running out of money. Even though they've raised $800 million, they are running out of money. Making a game like this is quite expensive, and they have been doing it for over a decade without a full release. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. They burn through a lot of cash. Okay, they really do. They've increased like marketing spend. They've increased spend on the IT side, on the dev side, all over the place. As you can see here, salaries, publishing and marketing, contracted dev costs, capex, G&A, other dev costs, and it's just going up and up and up. And I'm betting you 2024 total expenses are also going to be all the way up, even higher than this.
And here's the Angry Joe show again.
It's desperate. It must be that they have run out of funds.
I mean, I've been telling people for fucking weeks, according to the reporting, they have spent about $800 million on the game, which is how much they have raised.
This is the most mismanaged game of all time.
As CIG tried to finish off Squadron 42, the single-player game which is aiming for 2026, the amount of money that the company is spending each year is clearly very high. But although the signs point to them being out of cash, we have no real way to know if that's true, or if it is, how close to the edge they really are. I visited the main studio in Manchester in October 2024, and it's pretty clear that they put a lot of effort and money into creating a very fancy and enticing work environment. And they were also talking about expanding to another floor in the building. They were not acting like a company on the brink of financial ruin. If they were completely desperate, I would expect them to be rustling up a few more giant spaceships to sell to everybody. Concept ships are ships that have some concept art, but that's pretty much it. And they won't be flyable in-game for many, sometimes years. It's a very cheap way for CIG to print money. There are also some alien ships that will be in Squadron 42 that if they did decide to sell them, they would make millions from. And maybe if we see those this year, then maybe we should be worried that they really are on the edge. But there are currently no reports of unpaid staff, no mass job cuts. There are no real noises coming from inside the studio that they are on the edge of the cliff. Ships really are a proven moneymaker, as we've talked throughout this whole thing for CIG. Would somebody pay $10,000 for a Death Star type concept? I'm not saying that's a good thing, but yes, they would. Would somebody also spend a lot of money on a ship in the style of the Enterprise? Yes, they would. If CIG were right on the edge, desperate, literally about to go under, I would be expecting to see some pretty wild ship concepts coming out. Now, whether these claims of financial ruin are true or not, the damage they do really hurt CIG's brand. If people believe that Star Citizen is about to fail, well then they're clearly not going to give it a try. These Flight Blades have probably not made much money, but they have cost the studio a huge amount of reputation. Perception is a significant problem for CIG, as Luke again explains.
Perception is reality. For the average consumer, if they see that they get to start on a rinky-dink little spaceship that's super slow, can't go very far, and they see that, and then they compare it to the dude that was willing to spend $1,000 on a crazy spaceship, and they see that guy flying that around, zipping around, having a fantastic time. The perception is that the game is pay to win. If you spend more money, you'll have more fun. And that's what you have to deal with. Like, I know that, well, technically you don't win automatically if you spend more. Okay, but who cares? The perception is if you spend more, you have more fun. And that's the problem. That is at its core the problem, you know?
If the wider gaming community has the perception that Star Citizen is pay to win, well, that's a problem. If people have the perception that CIG are throwing out cash grabs, well, that's a problem. If your friend has the perception that there's very limited gameplay in Star Citizen, that's a problem. And if your dad has the perception that CIG's future funding will be built on tactics like these, that is a problem. Because this story has gone so wide, a lot of people have been exposed to opinions like this.
But yeah, I think at this point, it's pretty much safe to say that Star Citizen is a perpetual scam, and I don't actually ever fucking see it completing. And I don't see an incentive to concede. This is probably the most greedy thing that I've seen from any publisher. And it's crazy to think it's coming from like an indie publisher, technically, that hasn't even had a completed game. Make it make sense.
That is absolutely brutal. His video has got over 400,000 views in a couple of days. And if you heard that, your opinion, your perception of Star Citizen is going to be negative beyond belief. Ultimately, the whole situation has been a really unhelpful punch in the mouth for CIG. And they threw the punch. They have lost a couple of teeth, and it's going to be fascinating to see if they can stay out of trouble and slowly improve their reputation going forwards. But ultimately, there is something that everyone should probably do.
You know, one thing that I will say is Star Citizen is a unique gameplay experience. And I would recommend, there's free weekends. Right now, I think there's actually a free period. You can go to this website, you can go to RSI, you can register, you can actually download and play the game for free.
You really should just try Star Citizen for free and see what the deal is for yourself. At least, worst case scenario, it will be very interesting. Don't let somebody else make up your mind for you. Prepare for bugs and frustration. Performance is absolutely brutal unless you're on top-end hardware. But you might gain some insight into why some people within the Star Citizen community still, even after this whole drama, hope that the game might one day be worth all the pain. If you've made it this far, I now declare you a Star Citizen Flightblade drama expert. You now know more about Star Citizen than most people. You've passed the beginner's course, and now you can try to convince your dad not to buy another spaceship. I've linked all the different creators featured below. Go and check them out.